a number of industries that are highly technical, and again, you'll know this, because of the buyers and the clients you're working with, and that sometimes the numbers at play, you need to speak to experts. Technical knowledge outplays charisma a lot of time in these. You need somebody who understands the buying cycle, the challenges, the risk, who the key stakeholders are that can get brought in. So, like, it might be something like you can go and do a proper site survey and get right into it. If you don't get those people in your business, it's incredibly difficult to come in as a generalist, not of those sectors, and be productive because you've got such a learning curve to get through.
You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a modern approach to winning business, the application of virtual selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. Why not take our free collaborative selling scorecard to see how your sales approach suits today's environment? You'll find a link in the show notes.
And welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast, where I'm delighted to be joined by Jimmy Armitage. Jimmy is founder of Your Wavelength, which is a recruitment consultancy, but a special recruitment consultancy, isn't it, Jimmy? Come on, explain. Do a better intro than I just have.
Thanks, Fred. Yeah, Your Wavelength, we specialise in recruiting performing salespeople for privately owned businesses in the UK. So very much focus on all things sales, which is why I like having a good chin wag with you, good sir.
Yeah, so we ran a webinar a little bit back, so I'll pop a link to that straight away in the show notes if people want to see us talking about how they can do certain things. But today, what I wanted to talk about was something that you said the other day, and I thought, you know what, we need to riff on this a little bit. You said, not all good salespeople are right for your business. Not all good salespeople are right for your business. And well, if it's a good salesperson, I've got a business, and surely they're going to be right, aren't they? Tell me, where are you coming from with this?
Yeah, so we've been going 10 years doing this and just observing what goes well, having conversations with people before you start working with them and finding out what they've tried and what's gone well. And there's a whole litany, anyone listening to this that runs their own sort of technical business, so engineering, manufacturing, or a specific technical software, are probably familiar with this story, which is you hire somebody, 6 months go by and it's not worked out. And why hasn't it worked out? In a number of industries that are highly technical, and again, you'll know this, because of the buyers and the clients you're working with, and that sometimes the numbers at play, they need to speak to experts. Technical knowledge outplays charisma a lot of time in these.
Mm-hmm.
You need somebody who understands the buying cycle, the challenges, the risk, who the key stakeholders are that can get brought in. So, like, it might be something like you can go and do a proper site survey and get right into it. If you don't get those people in your business, it's incredibly difficult to come in as a generalist, not of those sectors, and be productive because you've got such a learning curve to get through. So that's really the angle that we were coming from with that conversation.
Yeah, no, I could see that. However, my thinking was, okay, we get someone who's extremely technical. They know a product inside out. They know how they can make something work brilliantly. You know, they're a great engineer. But what you described there, understanding a buying cycle, challenges customers have, how they perceive risk. I don't know if technical people do look at stuff like that, or whether they zoom into fixing the technical problem and aren't really thinking about the purchasing or the kind of the solution that they're giving. That's what I was like, okay, we need to just kick this one around a little bit.
Well, that's the rub, isn't it? At the end of the day, you've got to get somebody in. And so where we sort of got to on that thread really was if you're the owner of one of these businesses, you've got two options. You can either identify someone internally who has got the technical knowledge, but could well have the aptitude to be a good sales professional, like you said, actually be interested beyond just the specific technical problem. And I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on, I know you've done a fair bit in that area, so how you'd identify them. Or the other option is you recruit somebody, get somebody in that has got that technical knowledge but a proven track record of selling. And one of the things I'd be interested to know from you as well with the converting engineers, if you like, to salespeople is presumably that engineer has already got a job. So if you retrain them to come be a sales professional, what happens to the job that they had? Because as we know, being a part-time salesperson is a very difficult task.
Yeah, I mean, often the people I'll get involved with, they've got a job, but it's been made into a sales job. And kind of often how this might happen is that they're a great engineer, they're often called to go into customer meetings.
Yeah.
And of course, the customer bloody loves them. Why? Because they're talking the same language as them, they're fixing problems, they can relate to each other, and they're kind of off into the sunset together. So then somebody says, well, you ought to be a full-time salesperson. And they go, yeah, can't be that bad, can it? I'm having a lot of success when I go to have these meetings. But suddenly they're in that meeting for that technical expertise. They've now got all of that more business type stuff they need to bring to the party, and they haven't got that.
Yeah.
And it's frightening. And when we're frightened, we go to a comfort zone, and comfort zones talk tech. And so suddenly it's like, actually, why are they not a good salesperson anymore? Well, because they weren't really being a full-time salesperson, were they?
Yeah, well, that's the other bit, isn't it? So it's getting the meeting in the first place, starting the conversation to get the attention to get in the room.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
quite often in an engineering sale, we know that when the engineer is involved, it is further down the process. They're into kind of the analysis or the evaluation piece. And by
yeah,
the way, if we're talking at the RFP stage, you're too bloody late anyway. But that's a different podcast altogether. Yeah, but it's to kickstart that, oh, this is something that you might want to be looking at. It's probably somebody at a more senior level who's got kind of direction of the company in mind. They're looking at different challenges. They're not trying to fix a technical thing, which we open their eyes to it, which leads them into, okay, now we need to start to talk about the tech stuff. But a pure techie salesperson goes straight into tech stuff. And if they're trying to get that meeting with somebody higher up, they're like, oh, don't get it. Why are you telling me that? You should be talking to
yeah,
engineers. And of course, the engineers haven't got that problem because it's not been asked to solve it. So yeah, there are skills in learning how to go backwards and upwards in a sales process, or buying process, I should say.
yeah. So I guess stripping it back, then, we're talking about sales. I'm banging on about this all the time, but we're talking about sales is a good quality conversation with the right people, and that equals a sale.
Yeah.
So actually, in that skill set, probably where we're going to get to is you can either, we're just talking about two different candidate pools, really, aren't we? We're talking
Mm-hmm.
about internal, where you might need to bring somebody from the engineering or the technical specialism in your industry into a sales function and support them that way. Or you get somebody who already knows the industry and can sell and bring them in that way. Just two different talent pools. But I suppose what we actually need them to be able to do, what we're measuring them against, is probably the same. And then your decision as a business owner is which is going to be the most effective and the best suited for you. Like if you've got a load of capacity problems, probably pulling an engineer out and trying to make them a salesperson isn't going to help. But likewise, if the challenge for you of recruiting somebody with that background is they're expensive because everybody wants them because they've got that experience and they can sell, which basically makes them an asset. So, you invest 120K into them with their commission and everything else a year, and they deliver you 500K gross profit or more. Everyone wants that dealer, providing you've got the cash flow. So then you've got to pay them more. So I guess it's context, isn't it? Depending on where you're at and what's right for your business, depends on which lever you should pull.
And you're right. It's where you're at. So it's we're talking very generally here, aren't we? We just kind of have to, but each case is going to be different.
Yeah.
And you picked up, I just want to pick up when you said the right conversations. Absolutely agree 100%. I would say there's 5 things we need to get right if we're talking about selling. So it's finding the right opportunities, doing the right research to set us up for the right conversations,
Yeah.
which then is going to drive us the right solutions, which ultimately is giving our customer the right outcomes. Now, you could argue we start with right outcomes because that's what we sell anyway. So we've got to get those 5 rights. So now if we say, well, okay, let's take that as written, we've got to be picking how are we putting somebody in place to get those things right. is it this person we've got who actually is pretty good at conversations? They don't know how to do these other rights yet because no one's ever told them. Not been trained in that. It's process though. Engineers are pretty good with process. Yeah. Or is it, no, they'll keep zooming into that technical conversation. I'm going to have to get somebody who understands sales from the broader point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense to me. So that's what we're saying then. So to get even more specific on the type of sales, really is, let's take SaaS out of this, right? So lower volume sales that can be technical in there, but let's just move them out because that's going to be a different profile.
That's a
What
different
we're
thing.
talking
They
about,
have a different setup that they all subscribe to. So it's,
yeah.
leave it.
So, but talking about engineering, manufacturing, and maybe high-end
Yep.
systems, we're talking about
Yep.
high-ticket items, bespoke proposals,
Yeah.
and so there might be a low number of sales actually made, but high value. So we could be talking
Yep.
about you make 3 sales a year, but it's 1.8 million in revenue coming in.
Could be. Yeah.
So that's in SME land. That's what I see a fair bit in that sort of sector. You're looking at somebody bringing in 1.5 to 2.5 million. Ideally, that's going to drive 600k gross profit plus. So going back into your 5 areas, that skill set's massive because actually that deep research and understanding who are the key stakeholders in this organization and actually, okay, so who's going to sign the check? Well, the FD is going to need to sign off. What do they need to know? What level of detail do they want? What are their pressures? Are they being kept in the loop? Do they care about what you're doing? Because they've also got another 4 projects on their desk and they can only afford to pay for 2 of them, which is usually the drill.
Yeah. And so that's part of what people need to upskill on. So yes, we want to get in and talk about, you're trying to get a packaging machine which is going to be putting 10 tons of potato chips into bags per day. I don't know. Right, okay. Yeah, we can talk about that stuff all day long. You're going to need a little pneumatic closing system and there's something else that does that. And okay, brilliant. But like you've said, there's a FD who's thinking, well, yeah, but how am I going to buy this thing? Because all those chips we're going to sell, but am I going to pay for this before or after? What are the options here? Yeah, the ops director thinking, I'm going to need to integrate this into my plant. It's all very well that you can put things in bags, but it is this decision-making unit we talk about, it gets bigger. And so now we're managing people which are way out the comfort zone of someone who's good at the engineering bit. Now it's like, well, I suppose it's human engineering. Call it that. Ooh, that sounds a bit sinister. That, yeah, well, that sounds a bit sinister. Now I think I'll retract that statement. But it's managing. It's engineering the relationships with that. I know all these people are going to have something to say. I find them difficult to talk to. Oh, I can make it easier because I can start to understand what they do care about.
Yeah, and so we use those 4 pillars when we're looking to recruit somebody, which is capability, so skills, experience, and natural aptitude in that sort of box. Environment fit, which just means can you perform in the environment we need you to. Team fit, which is what we call culture, attitude, values, and then motivation. And so thinking about that, one of the benefits of bringing an engineer in that you already employ is you've got a good idea they fit your culture, right?
Yeah.
I think
they're still there.
Yeah.
They're working with you. You get on, right?
Now, there might be a bit of a tweak of the sort of behaviours they need to do. What makes you a great engineer might not make you the best salesperson culturally. And there'll be slight nuances across departments, right? But I guess that would be the least worrying for me. I guess if you brought me in on a project, say you were working with a client and you said, we've got a good idea, we're going to bring these engineers across. I know it's not what you do, Jimmy, but I wouldn't mind your opinion. And you have a chat with them and you go, well, culturally, you seem like you're happy with them. I'd really, really want to understand what their motivation is because we know that sales is repeatedly getting kicked in the teeth for the rare win. So is there a big enough incentive for them to move away from what they've been doing to understand why are you going to put yourself through this trauma on a weekly basis where you've got to learn a lot of new behaviors? What is the payoff? But if there is a big enough payoff, there's a good chance they'll be able to overcome it because they're usually smart people, right? You're a logical person, you can understand it, and providing you've got a good bit of EQ, you should be all right. So then in the capability side of it, you could probably, to be honest, in this, you could probably marry capability and environment fit, because environment fit is going to be field sales most often. So we know where people fall over in field sales when they've not done field sales before. It's okay. Are you comfortable going out to see clients? Are you comfortable with international flights if you need to do that? Can you stay away from home? Are you able to book meetings in advance? Are you able to confirm those meetings? When you go out to a meeting, are you going to walk in and see another business that's close by? When are you going to do your admin? When you sit in the meetings this week, when are you booking meetings for next week? How are you keeping that momentum? All these things, when you haven't done field sales, bite people on the bum. So it's understanding those things. And then from the skills, experience, and natural aptitude. So you're going to need them to have the natural aptitude to be able to communicate with people that they don't know. Otherwise, sales is going to be really difficult for them. And I imagine that's probably one of the litmus tests. If somebody says, look, we've got 5 engineers here that all think that they want to move across to sales, probably the easiest win straight away is just to go, what's their natural aptitude for having good quality conversations with people in technical and outside of technical? Because if they can't do that, as you said earlier on in this conversation, you've only got one stakeholder out of probably 5 that's interested. You're not going to bring anyone from the top table to this conversation. How's that sounding so far, Fred? I'm going on a bit of a riff here.
No. It's good. It's good because yeah, there's something, isn't there? I'm probably going to get this wrong. It's like you can click. What's this? Somebody said you could probably train a fish to climb a tree, but it's easier if you start with a monkey or something like that. I don't know if that's relevant to it or if that's just it came
I
into my
like
head
it.
anyway.
Let's go with it.
Yeah, let's use that. We'll make it fit.
Yeah.
But no, what I was thinking was the motivation and the capability thing. Actually, I think they can be linked. Actually, that's where I drew the link. While you were writing, I was drawing on my little pad here, and I drew a link between those because if we up the capability, they're not going to need the motivation to keep dealing with kicks in the teeth because they're not going to get kicked in the teeth enough as much because they will know how to get into those conversations with the right people at the right time to move their stuff on and to kind of get those hits, those wins. But what that needs though is this kind of this untraining in that you can't be leading in with your product and how brilliant it is and the thing that you know really well that you've been selling for ages and you're probably massively proud of. That isn't going to get you where you want to be. Now that's probably one of the biggest blockers that people find if they're making that shift. We've got to unpick that and say there's other ways in which we've got to do this. You will get to that, don't worry, but that isn't your lead. How bloody brilliant you are at engineering, how superb your company is, that can turn people off. Particularly because if you're an engineer, you're probably selling to other engineers.
Yeah.
The danger is you're rocking up and going, I'm a better engineer than you, and so you need my help for you to be able to survive. Okay, right, probably not going to be so effective at that.
Yeah, imagine that's going to ingratiate you pretty quickly with their
That's what
technical
people
team.
do. I've seen it so much.
God.
I actually did it once. I did this on a training course once to prove a point. A bit of a risk, but I thought, I'm going to do this. And I stood in front of everybody, and I just walked in. I said, right, before we start, it's worth me pointing out that I'm a better engineer than most of you in here. I think I managed to hold a straight face for about 3 seconds and then went, right, time out. Look, I'm not even a trained engineer. But why did I say that? And again, these are smart people. And someone went, oh, bloody hell. That's what we do, isn't it? That's what you might. That's what we need to unpick. We need to give you a better way to get in and then prove that actually you are great at what you do and you can genuinely help people. But saying it doesn't work. So there's some stuff which is counterintuitive to that logical mind we can put in place. So going back to what you were saying, but maybe it's just easier if we start with our own people doing that and get them trained up. Or have somebody that we know is already trained to do that and understands the products or understands them enough to get it to the point where actually now I'm going to bring one of our experts in. I don't need to know how it actually works at that level of detail.
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? Because maybe that's the line you draw, which is just how much technical knowledge do you need when? Because I suppose if you were going to put a dream team together, based on what we said earlier, the profile is less than 10 sales a year in terms of volume. High ticket, so let's anywhere between 1.5 to 2.5 million, could be more. There's no really need to cap the top. It doesn't really matter, does it? Because it's going to come down to margin and what have you. But the skill set there, where I would suspect a lot of engineers are going to get frustrated and fall over, is the time it takes to get through that sales cycle, which has got nothing to do with the technical knowledge. You're trying
Before
to,
they're allowed to talk about the stuff they really want to talk about.
yeah, and understand what is the true picture. And also then being, again, there's so many things we can throw in, but just things that sabotage a lot of people is having the emotional robustness to be honest. All right, so I can see that I'm talking to Fred here. He's got this problem he's articulated. And actually, I don't think we're the best solution. Well, you can either pretend that you are the best solution, but guess what's going to come out in the wash? After 12 months of running about like a wally, you're not the best solution, you haven't won the business. Or you can maybe face into that and find out a bit more information, because you actually might find some information that means you are the better option because you've built the trust, trying to understand what are the rules of the game. Is it budget? Is it timeline? Is it what are the problems they've got in the business? So I think that your optimum solution most of the time is going to be either somebody you can train in that very quickly, given about the weight of the amount of work that you need to do is probably going to be harder on the sales side than it is on the technical. But again, depends what you're selling. If you're selling something where you need a PhD.
And you might need a PhD to have the credibility to get yourself in the room.
Yeah.
You don't use your PhD, just 3 letters, you know. And again, that's that. But that's when people go, but that's crazy. Why would I not do that? It's working for a different reason. And it's sometimes accepting that some of the sales stuff is a bit counterintuitive. Like when you were talking about that, the price thing, you know, to lead with the floor, to be radically transparent and say, do you know, if you're looking at price, we're probably not the best option for you. I'll tell you that now. But if you're also looking at reliability, serviceability, if you're looking at kind of optionals for upgrades, then we are. So it just depends whether that is something or not. Now, that wouldn't occur to people who are not trained in sales. They'd be like, no, surely we've got to go in and tell them how brilliant our stuff is and just hope they don't pick up on the bit that we're not. It's like, no, you tell them. Oh, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't compute. No, but that's how trust is built and that's how it works better.
Yeah.
And that stuff you can train. That is really trainable. But that, to be fair, that's now I'm talking about stuff which is both for like an internal appointment, or actually probably even if you're bringing people in, that might be stuff that, because of how sales is developing, they probably need the upskill piece too. So
yeah, and I suppose looking at, if you were to look at the whole activity, if you were to list out every single activity that you need this person to do, how much of it is technical and how much of it is an understanding of sales? And that might be a way you can make the decision as the owner of the business, right? Like if you're like, well, there's not that many stakeholders involved, usually in whatever we sell. It's a pretty straightforward process. Still takes like 9 months often to close it all, but reality is it's need finder that actually we create the need internally with our marketing team, so we don't need the salesperson to hunt it. And then what they're coming in is going in and leading that. And we can train them and get Fred in, we can train them on that, show them what best practice is, get them a process that they can follow and they're comfortable with, and support them and mentor them through it. Then maybe that's the way to go. I think the line to draw that in is where you're asking somebody to go from never selling to leading the research piece, the communication piece, the need find, managing those relationships, the kicking a long sales process along so you keep moving it forward, progressing it, staying in front of mind, closing the deal. You're asking a lot of somebody there. And then what's the consequences of getting it wrong? So if you put someone in the wrong seat and you don't close 6 deals, do you get another shot at it?
what? Just kind of, we're sort of moving towards wrap up, but there's another question on here as well, which is you talk to a lot of founders, business owners, directors. Again, in this particular world, engineering world, and they've set up and they've probably invented something or they've got something they've done really well and people have come and bought them and they're now at this next stage of scaling up, let's use that language. Yeah. And they're looking to bring a salesperson in to do the selling bit because they don't do selling. So I'm going to get someone in who gets the selling piece. Do you see a danger in that thinking ever? Now, there is something I have a bit of an opinion around that. If somebody's at this particular phase in their growth.
Couple just off the top of my head, a couple of things. One, have you truly got the resources you need to
Yeah.
get somebody in? Because let's do the simple maths. An 8-month sales cycle, say, to close the deal. They've
Yeah.
just walked into your business and they don't know anything. So let's say they're not going to get productive till week 4 of actually doing some sales activity, and they're not going to be fully ramped up till week 12. And you've got Christmas probably in that year somewhere as well. So you've basically got a year of
Or
pain.
summer. It's somewhere
Yeah,
in your
yeah.
90-day plan. There's like a big blip.
Yeah. So, realistically, you're going to pay someone a year's worth of salary, plus the NI, plus the company car, plus everything else, and not get any actual cash back in for that return. So that's why we do that return on investment piece before we work with anyone. But is this right for you? So that'd be the first thing. And then the other thing would be typically what you've just described in my experience is somebody now looking to on the size of the client they're working with. We've done
Mm.
really well. We set this up 30 years ago. We're blooming good at creating this widget, but now we want to start hitting some of these bigger companies. And I need somebody who comes in and knows that. Great. But then what you can't necessarily do, which is probably what you want to do, is tell them all how they should sell. It's like we've brought this person in, or we're bringing this person in because they've done triple the revenue this company has in their last year. Why don't we get them to share how they've done it rather than insist? That's kind of what comes to my mind. What were you going to say?
Yeah, no, it's similar to what you're saying there, is that there is a bit of a risk, isn't there? That you bring in this superstar and they're expensive. And now who is running the sales of that company and understands how the sales of that company works and kind of has their fingerprints all over it. Now you
Yeah,
might want that, and that's what you. But part of me is like, depending where you are, what about investing the time and effort into understanding this stuff yourself, leading it yourself, or at least having the understanding so that when the person that comes in, you're not completely beholden to them. They can have you over barrel, essentially.
yeah, yeah,
Now, look, maybe I'm being a bit sort of cynical and glass half empty and all that sort of stuff. But I would say at some stage, it's almost better to get yourself sorted, understanding the sales process, those 5 right things we need to do, how we need to do them, building them into your business, getting those slightly bigger opportunities, bringing them in, knowing how to do that, learning from that, and then saying, right, okay, we've modeled this, we know it works. Now we can recruit or internal or whatever, someone to do that. But it's our
yeah,
system that we get.
100%. So, like, whatever you do, fundamentally as a business, like step into the business owner shoes, you need to understand what activities and what do we invest at the front to win a new client, and then how do we deliver it, and what profit do we make to get money out the end. Whether you want to drive the business forward for growth, whether you want to sell the business, or whether you want to just take a bit more of a backseat role, you absolutely need to understand that playbook of how do we
Yep.
go out into the world and win new business. So
Yeah.
just hiring somebody and then hoping they're the expert and disengaging rarely works well. Rarely ends in a good spot.
Because when you're recruiting for people, they come with a playbook, don't they? Or I can't remember the order you told me. It's like we build the playbook or we recruit to the playbook, or
Yeah,
there's the person, that's the play. There's a playbook involved. It's not like this person's going to come in and do what they want. It's they're coming in and they're doing it this way. And they don't, well, they don't like it, they're not going to get recruited. But that
yeah.
is the way we do stuff around here, kind of thing.
It's a bit
That's
like a
set.
bridge, really. So
Yeah.
we do the return on investment first, which is ultimately, because this is the reality for most business owners. Well, every business owner really is you are going to choose to pay yourself a lower dividend this year than you possibly could do because you're going to invest in somebody to come in. And the reason you're doing that is because you believe that that person will return bigger investment year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. Great. So let's have a look if there's enough return on investment for you to take the risk of bringing somebody in, because it is a risk. No matter what anyone says, bringing another human being into your organization is a risk. Now, what we've got to do is minimize that risk, which is, okay, what key activities do they actually need to do? Like we've talked in this conversation, breaking down your 5 areas. Okay, so what does that look like? And how many of them do they need to do each week? Put that together as a starter, and we put that in the job advert. So you have a sales target and you have an activity target in the job advert, and then we bring people through based on their ability to deliver that, as well as the other things. And then when they start, we then have an onboarding session with them where we go through that activity, those playbooks, who the top 10 clients are, and we pull that together with the employer, the salesperson, and me, sort of square that circle, if you like. So I got my soapbox then, didn't I? Very excited.
No, that's a good. It's a good soapbox. I wasn't going to interrupt you. It's a good one, and I pulled you off it. If it wasn't a good one, I pulled you off it. But it's fine. It makes a lot of sense. It might make some sense for people to have a chat to you about this if they're listening. If they're listening to this. So, where can people get in touch with you then?
So
Best
the
way.
best place to get hold of me is on LinkedIn. So Jimmy Armitage on LinkedIn. I post multiple times a week about this sort of thing. Fairly active on there. Just reach out, give us a message, and we can have a chat.
Awesome. We'll pop your link into the show notes so if people want to do that, and mention that you've heard Jimmy and I talking on this when you reach out. But mate, thank you. I think this conversation, we could be recording this for another couple of hours, but I think we've sort of got some good stuff in there, some food for thought. You know, people do want to talk, reach out to you, reach out to me. But
Yeah, well, I
thanks for
think
coming on and sharing.
no worries. Well, I think before we go, like right back at you, right? So yeah, recruiting somebody might be the right thing to do, but actually, you might already have those stars in your organisation, and if you do, then that might be the best place to start, even before you go out to market. Is have a chat with you, talk about what the pitfalls are likely to be. I mean, would you say if somebody brought you in for half a day to meet their team, you'd instinctively have a pretty good idea of who's going to work out and who's not? Who's at least could you rule people out pretty early doors that are just definitely not right?
I tend to train rather than to assess. So if I'm doing something, it's probably more here is stuff that you want to be taking away and using and implementing.
Yeah,
If it's over a longer period of time, I can give people something, but it's always with the proviso this is an impressions basis, not assessment. That's
yeah,
not really my thing. Now there are assessments people can use, got access to some of those. But no, if they're looking for people, I'd probably put them someone like you.
good man.
But awesome. No, thanks for coming along. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm sure we'll probably pick up on this conversation, another angle on it at some stage in the future.
Great stuff. Thanks for having us, Fred.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please get in touch and hit subscribe. And remember, you can take the collaborative selling scorecard for free to check out how your sales approach works in today's environment. You'll find it in the show notes.